Welcome everyone to Conversational Witchcraft with me, Dawn the Kitchen Witch. I'm so excited. But before we get going, I want to make sure that everyone you like and subscribe to this podcast. And I'm happy to announce you can now click the link and support more conversations and connections through magic and food. So check out the support link as well. And remember to head over to cucinaaurora.com to learn more about kitchen witchcraft and to deepen your understanding and creating magic every day with Cucina, Aurora, Kitchen Witchcraft, and me, Dawn the Kitchen Witch. So let's get right into it. Today on the show, we are welcoming Marshal, Witch of the Southern Light. I'm sorry, Witch of Southern Light. Marshall is a practicing traditional folkloric witch living in Texas. He runs a popular podcast, Southern Bramble, a podcast of crooked ways, and is the author of the book Cunning Words, a grimoire of tales and magic, now available on Amazon. And his blog, The Southern Light Diaries, can be found at Pathos Pagan. You guys, let's welcome Marshall, Witch of Southern Light. Marshall, I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm excited. You reached out to me, which is awesome because we're all kind of like stalking of each other, and I love your Instagram.
Oh, thank you. Oh, that means the world to me. Thank you
I
so
do.
much.
It's fucking beautiful and like creepy and dark, but sexy. Like the just your all the content you post is so fabulous.
Thank you. It's got like I feel like I give it like a Victorian opium room vibe, Lots of like lush, like
Yes.
jewel tones and statements that punch you, but also make you laugh a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, really, really good content. So
Thank
like
you.
a little bit of a little bit of a nerd, and I follow all these people like reach out to me, and I'm like, ooh, what are you about? Oh, so cool. Very, very, very cool. So you're down in Texas.
Yeah. Born and
Whereabouts in
raised.
really?
Yeah, I'm born and raised in a big city, kind of central North Texas. I don't always like to say the exact location, just in case, for safety
That's
reasons. But
cool. Absolutely.
and it's a big state, so like,
Yeah.
yeah,
But
it's
Texas right
crazy
now is not like is a very difficult place in general, especially to be a witch and especially to
politically.
be a queer witch, right? I mean,
Yes.
and I like Texas. I've been there a bunch of times. I got some friends down there.
Mhm.
But I imagine that's difficult right now.
It's interesting. I'm glad you asked that question or brought it up because I was born and raised here. I grew up here. This is where my family is. This is
Yeah.
where my home is, and I have to admit, I spent a long time struggling with my deep
Mm,
disdain of the state that I live in because
yeah.
this was the circumstances I was born into. I found a job, a really, really good job at a very young age, and I was able to build my career up here close to my family, and well, I have had the privilege of being able to travel throughout my life and experience other parts of the world.
Yeah.
Um, I've never wanted to leave my support system, and that means putting up with the situation that I'm in living here.
Mm.
And I have to admit, witchcraft was one of those things that changed my feelings about my state. So it'd be my state of being and the state I
And your
live
state
in.
of mind
Yeah,
and the
yeah.
state you live in and
Right? Because
right.
because a huge part of my practice is all about animism. Animism, the spirit of place, the spirit of everything around me, my home, my block, my neighborhood, the
Mm.
trees, the ground, the grass, everything that I experience is all spirit related. And growing up in such a conservative political climate, experiencing severe injustices for all sorts of people on the spectrum of minority, I always associated my state with that.
Yeah.
But now I have the ability to separate the spirit of my place, the spirit of my land, the place that I live in, the spirits that I work with on a daily basis. That is separate. Texas and that element of spirit is very, very separate from the people over in Austin who make the laws.
Yeah.
That's their not it's not about their base, but that's their can we
Yeah, yeah, you can
okay.
fucking say shit, whatever. Yeah.
Excellent,
We've got
excellent. That's their shit.
the little parental warning on our show.
Yes,
So
explicit.
yeah,
I love it. So
explicit. Yeah, for
that's
sure.
their shit. They can do with their shit what they will.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, living in the States, sometimes it may affect me, and I'll do what
Yeah.
I can to work with it. I'll encourage I always like to say when it comes to politics, vote local, start where you
Mm,
live, and then go out. Because if we're only ever voting when it comes to every 4 years in the White House, you're actually having very little impact. The impact starts at home, and getting away from this state as an entire geopolitical state of conservatism and going back to my hearth, my family. The city I live in is actually quite blue. I live in the neighborhood. Yes, I know, I love it. It's
I love
called the
it.
neighborhood. And that alone has been a huge and spirited experience for me because I live in a building that was built in 1985, a year before I was born. And, the 80s, especially for the queer community, was an extremely tumultuous
Very hard.
time.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of people who have come and gone, not only in this area, but my very building, my home. I
Yeah.
had a neighbor downstairs. I remember we were all out in the pool one day, and he told us, he said he was really, really glad to see more young people moving in, because he was the last of his friends.
Mm,
They were a big group of friends, and when the AIDS crisis happened in the 80s, everyone started dying,
yeah.
and he was the only one out of all of them that
Yeah.
survived. So m- I feel like the place I live in carries this spirit of queerness, this thirst for life, this want and need and yearning to feel that freedom of queerness that I now have the privilege of having. So that's my
Wow.
craft. That's my home, and I
Amazing.
love it.
That's amazing. And so let's go back a little bit further because being
Let's do it.
born and raised in Texas,
Hmm.
again, very Christian, very conservative politically. How in the world did you stumble across witchcraft?
You know, I've always been obsessed with witches since I was a kid. I mean, I literally remember having a like as a small child. I had a Bart Simpson's doll that
Yeah,
I had a handkerchief that I made a cape, like a hooded cape with a rubber band, and then I would tape it to one of my dad's like cooking, like basting paintbrush things that he used for the grill. And then when my mom or dad would take me on drives, I'd beg them to roll down the window so I could hold it outside and make the witch fly. Like I was just obsessed with witches, down
that is
to
the
a
cutest.
literally down to a toy based level. I always have this thing and draw and pull towards witches and witchcraft. And I want to say when I was in middle school, I feel like that was the age. Like I was a big reader as well. So a lot of Goosebumps books, a lot of R.L.
Yes.
Stein. And I remember
Yes.
like the bookstore was my happy place. So
Yeah.
sometimes my mom, when she would go shopping, she'd drop me off at like Books a Million or Barnes and Noble,
Yeah.
and she would do the shopping and come pick me up. I happened to come across like the spiritual section, the Wicca section in the 90s, of course.
Everything was
Wicca, everything
Wicca.
was
Yeah.
Wicca, everything
Yeah.
Wicca,
Yeah.
Wicca, Wicca,
Yeah. Yeah.
Wicca. And I got Buckland's Big Blue Book. It's actually not even a unique tale. I feel like everyone from my generation found Buckland's Big Blue Book of Witchcraft. And
Yeah. My generation was Silver Raven Wolf. So
oh,
yes.
same as well.
Yeah.
Exactly. My
Yeah.
second book was Teen Witch by Silver
Yep.
Raven Wolf
Yep. It was
with the
Ride a Silver Broomstick. All of us 90s
yes,
kids,
loved it.
I'm a lot older than you. And that was it. It was, we all found Ride a Silver Broomstick and we were like, what is
This is it.
this?
This is
What?
it.
What?
Yes. And
Amazing.
I took a lot of it as gospel. I now am
Mm,
old enough to understand that some of this is a little bit of a either a misunderstood or revisionist history.
mm,
But it was something that I just was immediately drawn to. And I remember saving up my lawnmower money and like, going and buying that book and hiding it from my mom. And it was very interesting. My dad is atheist or agnostic. He really doesn't care.
right.
My mom, born and raised Episcopalian, from a mixed background. Her father's Orthodox Jewish, mother Episcopalian. So
Wow.
that had a whole nother branch of things when she was younger.
Right.
And so it was strange. There were times when she was just like, Marshall's exploring. Let him have this time to explore. And there were times where she was deathly afraid for my soul. And, it was interesting when I started coming out, because I came out as a witch before I came out as gay.
Right.
She sought advice from our priest, at the church,
Wow.
specifically about my wanting to look into witchcraft. And of course, he was very condemning, and you have to save him, bring him to church every weekend, blah, 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 blah. But then when I came out as gay, the advice didn't sit with her the same way because I could choose my religion, but she
Mm,
knows she's a therapist. She's an LPC, a licensed professional counselor. So
mhm.
she's very aware of the importance of being queer affirming and what that is intrinsically to who I am.
Yeah.
And when she realized that it was pretty much the same advice, like you got to change them, you got to bring them in, you got to get them renounced, she
Right.
slowly started to pull back and started thinking like, I don't know if I can trust this man to give me spiritual advice anymore. And it started to slowly change the way that she thought about being open and accepting. And now, literally, she's like, she loves it. Like she brags about the book that I wrote to all of her friends.
Yeah.
It's really, really cute. Her boyfriend, her partner, is helping me produce the audiobook too. So like she's so proud. I'm so grateful to have such accepting parents.
Wow. I mean, again, I like to learn about everybody's the childhood, the formative years, and how people come into witchcraft. And it's it's really cool because we have so many similarities. So all of us being on such separate paths, so individual, right? And I think that's one of the pulls for witchcraft, for paganism, at least it was for me, was
Hmm.
that non-conformity. Like you can make this whatever you want it to be, right?
Hmm.
The recipe for your spiritual self is exactly like the recipe for your authentic self. It's
Hmm.
who are you, what you like, how you dress, how you style your hair. It doesn't matter because it's yours and yours alone. To come into it, we all sort of have these same stories, we find these books, or we loved these stories, or there was characters in a Disney movie that we just resonated with, and
Hmm.
to see that be nurtured in you, that your family was like, yeah, let them explore. That informs
To a
your
degree.
right. I mean, but that informs your ability to
Hmm.
go, well, mom and dad are going to love me anyway, so maybe I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do that. Has that been such a foundational thing as you've grown? Because now, like you said, you have a book, you have this podcast, you are making a living s- as a witch and being a public figure. How did that early acceptance, early in your teens, right?
Hmm.
How did that inform you being able to do that now as an adult?
Well, it's very interesting. I spent a good, I want to say almost 10 years completely devoid of spirituality through my 20s because it was all through my young
Wow.
early teens to late teens. Around I want to say like my early 20s.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened. And I just sort of, life kind of slapped me in the face a little bit. And I feel like I actually had a hard time. This is a little bit away from witchy stuff and into
It's
gay stuff,
okay.
but hey, it's
Yeah.
very real, right? The
Yeah.
gay community is one of those that it's expanding, it's evolving now, and I love it, and I feel much more comfortable now. But my 20s were really about, okay, now I'm comfortable with my queerness, but now I have to fit in with all the other gays. It was very mask for mask only. It was very like
Mhm.
fit tan bodies. It was all about diet culture. It was all about
Mhm.
it's very sex forward. And
Yeah.
these are a lot of things that I wasn't always as comfortable with, but I found that I wanted to be the popular gay person because I wasn't the popular person in my school. Like
Right.
if I have this very, how can I put this? Othered childhood in my 20s, I didn't want to feel othered anymore. And I went through a lot of experimenting, trying to conform to what I thought would be the most attractive Marshall, the most acceptable Marshall, the safest Marshall that would be available in all circles. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, while I had lots of lovely experiences, um, I was not able to fully be myself at all times. And I needed to go through that journey to kind of find that being comfortable with who I am was something that was more important than spending so much time trying to be comfortable being someone who's good for someone else, if that makes sense, especially if as a community.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I don't think that that is a uniquely queer experience.
Oh, definitely.
I think that that is a lot. And again, it doesn't matter if it's not witchy or whatever, but like life journey, right? And
Yeah.
I think we all have these moments in our lives. I could speak to my own, late teens, early 20s and going, okay, I'm finally kind of like free of this, I'm gaining that independence of young adulthood and going, okay, so who do I want to be? Well, in this circle, I'm supposed to be this person. And in this circle,
Hmm.
I'm supposed to be that person. And some people experiment with drugs and alcohol, and some people experiment with sex and promiscuity, and some people experiment with all of it. And maybe we put ourselves in situations that we really shouldn't be putting ourselves in. And when
A
we think
lot.
about it, we're like, oh, ew, I was so gross. Again, personal experience, like, oh,
Hmm.
dear God, that's something I did because I thought that's who I was supposed to be in this situation.
Hmm.
That's and I think that does come from, at least in my own experience, growing up in an environment where you have to be this way. This
Hmm.
is our picture of you, and you don't fit this mold. And so you'll be shamed for not fitting that mold. You'll be ostracized for not fitting that mold. Even the people that are supposed to protect you will kind of make fun of you and be like, what's wrong with you?
Hmm.
And so you have that experience. And I definitely think that in finding who you are and at the same time finding witchcraft, for me anyway, because they sort of happen at the same time for me,
Hmm.
you do necessarily go, well, if I'm gonna be a witch, like this is me because I'm an overachiever. If I'm gonna be a witch, well, I've got to be the best witch ever. And I have to show everybody else how fucking great I am. And
Oh
I have to
yeah.
make sure that all my spells are perfect. And I have to tell everybody about. As we get older, we realize maybe it can be whatever we want it to be and form it to us, not us to it. Would you agree?
Oh, 100%. I feel like because I didn't fit in the cishet mold that was kind of expected when I was out on my own and independent, I was like, well, if the mold that I am is gay, I got to fit this mold now. And I didn't quite understand that I don't have to jump from a mold I didn't fit in to pour myself into another mold because that's the one I think I'm in. In fact, I don't have to fit in any mold at all. I can create my own mold and it can evolve and change with me. I think that's one of those things that many of us don't give ourselves the grace for. That I
Mm,
think we don't always give ourselves the freedom to think, I am allowed to change my opinion. I'm allowed to change my mind. I'm
mhm,
allowed to be exposed to new information. And if it's not congruent with my old idea of what is and isn't, the new information should expand it. If I find myself shutting down at new information, then I'm no better than the conservative people who are controlling my Texas state to begin with.
yes, and that idea of if you know better, do better, but you have to be
Yes.
open to know better. And that is about self. It is about others. It is about
Hmm.
witchcraft. It is about social injustice. It's about all of those things,
All of
right?
these
We
things.
have to be open enough to realize, hey, I'm not always fucking right. And I'm not always fucking right even about myself.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're going to teach me something and I'm going to go, wow, that's a big light bulb moment for me.
Hmm.
But if I'm like, I know everything about everything, now I'm closed to that and I won't grow and I won't progress. And that kind of brings us back to witchcraft, right? So,
Exactly.
right, you go through this time period where you're trying to fit into, like you said, you had been othered. And now you're like, oh, well, if I'm othered, now at least I know what other I am. So
Exactly.
now I can be the other. And you're in there going, it still doesn't work for me. I
Yeah.
still can't be exactly what. And can I just sidebar really quick? When you're
Please.
talking about that, that the culture of being tan and blonde and beautiful, and seriously, like as if you would ever have trouble being tan and blonde and beautiful. I looked at your Instagram, my friend. Damn.
Well, thank you.
Okay. You're so gorgeous. People, if you're just listening to this and you're not actually watching this video, go watch the video because he is beautiful. Your eyes are incredible. Your hair is gorgeous. And you have this glowing spirit about you of kindness that, and being honest, I wasn't expecting to radiate from you.
Oh, thank you.
You are genuinely beautiful and soft and lovely, and at the same time, like gorgeous and masculine and like beautiful. So yeah, I can't imagine, but I know that, that's what we feel about ourselves is not necessarily how we feel on the outside all the time. But yeah, no, seriously, I'm sure you were breaking hearts left and right.
Well,
So
you're very, very kind. Thank you for saying that. And you know, you're absolutely right. We all are hardest on ourselves, and sometimes I'm not gonna say it's nice to hear that. Like it is very nice to hear that, but it's good of us to remember that when we're hardest on ourselves, sometimes we miss the good things that are already there. And yeah, it's 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 something that I've struggled with my whole life, and trying to witchcraft was actually one of those things that helped me find that beauty within.
mm,
In my 30s was the first time I started wearing like skirts a lot.
yeah.
I started, in my 20s, I started growing out my hair. I started thinking about the way in which I don't have to be this perfect masculine, the picture of masculinity. So I don't scare off the gays to find me attractive, and I don't scare off the heteros who won't accept a version of me that isn't an acceptable version, especially in
Mm,
Texas.
yes.
And it's very interesting because I was so much happier. Like I remember like just in my bedroom in a skirt twirling and just like giggling at myself like like Wonder Woman twirls.
Yes.
It was like I want to wear this out. And I remember the first time I did, oh, I was so scared. Like I
Oh,
was freaking out. But it was one of those things that I'm so surrounded by kind and affirming people that I got a lot of compliments right off of the bat. And what's interesting is I even got there's a I work at a salon. I'm a hairstylist by day. So there is an assistant that we have there who's much younger than me. And he asked me, he was like, "You seem really, really comfortable with your feminine side. Can I ask you um how you got so comfortable that way?" And it was such a moving question
mm,
because you could see he was experimenting with his feminine side as well.
yeah.
And it was funny because over the next year, I started seeing like he put extensions in to have like a longer mullet. He
I
started
love
wearing big
it.
dangly earrings. He
Yeah.
started wearing like pearl necklace. It was like you could see this joy coming
Yeah.
out because there was someone that he saw that made him go, I can do that too. I can embrace my femininity as well. And it's beautiful.
I think that is so incredible that you have found a level within yourself, within your spiritual self, that you are able to bring that comfort and that joy out into the world. And it's interesting to hear you talk about your feminine side and your masculine side. And, you know, I don't think people would assume that everyone has those situations. As a
Mhm.
cisgender white woman
Right.
growing up thinking, well, I can't be feminine because that makes me weak. So as a woman, I
Mm.
have to walk into a room, shoulders back, be assertive, but not too assertive because then I'm a bitch. But I would lean into, I did construction for years. I hated the color pink. I was like, oh, fucking pink is for pussies,
Hmm.
as a girl, because I didn't want to be judged as being too feminine or victimized in that way. And I thought, well, if I can lean into this type of energy, then I can be strong and I won't read victim. Right. And it was working with witchcraft, it was working with goddess energy,
Hmm.
um, that kind of helped heal a relationship with femininity, with maternal energy, right? With that victim mentality of potentially, generational trauma. And it's
Hmm.
amazing how when we start to get into the spiritual side of things, how it can really affect us on that personal, psychological, personality level.
Oh, absolutely. Getting in touch with my femininity and recognize like I am a cis white man. I recognize my pronouns are he him. I am not I'm not on the trans spectrum or non-binary, but I do embrace that femininity. I do
Hmm.
think that all of us have different levels of masculinity and femininity. It's in all of us. It's a balance that we all have different versions of and express throughout our lives at different times in that journey. And it was one of those things, again, yes, witchcraft helped me, especially when I was much younger, much younger, finding a place that centered goddess work and goddess
Mm.
worship and the divinity of feminism was one of those things where in such a patriarchal world, especially in Texas,
Mhm.
um,
Yes. Yeah.
I had no I had no examples of this before witchcraft, before Wicca, before the information that I was able to expose myself to. And it was such a freeing thing to find that like special place where my femininity doesn't make me weak. It actually makes me stronger because funny enough, hypermasculine men, I make very nervous, because I don't know whether it's a mixture of they see something in me
Yeah.
that they can't quite grasp or touch. And
Hmm.
it's so interesting because even straight men are really finding much more of that beauty and spectrum and femininity. Straight men are wearing more pearls. They're painting their nails.
Hmm.
They're talking about their feelings and it's being supported by especially by younger generations. Oh, my God, the difference between what high
Hmm.
school is now versus what it was when I was in school is a glorious
Yes.
evolution. I'm so
Yes.
happy for that.
Absolutely. I mean, listen, so at Halloween,
Yeah.
my husband decided he wanted to paint his nails black. Now, this is a heavy metal guy. This is a guy who has played in bands. He's artistic or whatever. But he has a real like grown up corporate job, right? So he's like, yeah, he's like, I'm just gonna do for Halloween. Okay, cool. And I was like, yeah, I'm gonna paint your nails for you. Great, no problem. And then I figured, oh, he's just gonna take it off after Halloween because it's just
Hmm.
Halloween. And I was like, okay, you want me to take the nail polish off? And he's like, no, I want to keep it on. And I was like, you like it? He's like, I do like it. And I was like,
I
all right,
yeah.
right. So I mean, here's a 45-year-old cisgender white man, very, very, very heterosexual person. To be fair, he loves pocketbooks, he loves bags, he's got a thing for shoes. So like he definitely leans it. I mean, he dresses way better
He's
than me.
he's got taste.
He does, honey. He does. And he was like, no, I'm going to keep it on. And he went to his fancy corporate job and everybody was like, hey, man, what's up? And that was it. Like there was no conversation. And I think that is happening. And we're way, way off topic, but it's so much fun.
It
Um,
is.
so I want to get back to after you went through this and
Yeah.
you said you really had this void of spiritual self
Hmm.
during that period of time. What brought you back to witchcraft and why and how did that feel different from your first introductions?
In my early 30s, I got started getting more back into like spirituality. There was a phase of new age stuff that I was lucky to kind of like pass through.
Yeah.
Um, I kind of fell in the law of attraction hole and it started off with positive thinking, ended up with I brought this on myself. And, I decided, I don't think this is healthy spiritually or mentally. And
Yeah.
um, I, in my early 30s, I actually went through the process of becoming a foster dad. Trained for about 6 months. I got licensed over a period of a year. I had two little girls at different times. And it was wonderful and probably one of the most traumatic experiences because you fall in love with these children, you care for these children. Um, you want, you understand that there is the possibility that one day, if circumstances fall in a specific way, I may be able to become your permanent parent. But the way in which the foster system is set up is it's really made to help parents who lose custody find that path back to getting it. And I saw a lot of the brokenness of the system. I saw a
Yeah.
lot of the bureaucracy. I saw the way in which my CPS agent would there'd be a need, and if there was a need, paperwork would need to be done, and then it would need to go through 6 different levels and be signed off. And then there's thousands of children that are going through that process. And So nothing happened. If you needed something to happen, nothing happened for months. It took
Mm,
so long. And my spirituality, as it was evolving, I found myself in some specific situations that were of desperate need. Um,
mm.
my first foster daughter, she was an infant when she came to me. I literally took a paternal leave from work for 8 weeks, and she was 8 days old when she came to me. I won't give you the full backstory, but eventually, after 3 or 4 months, she was moved to another family who had adopted her older siblings years ago, and they try to keep siblings together.
Absolutely. Yeah.
While, of course, that was extremely traumatic, falling in love and then knowing what's best for them is to be with family, and having to drive there myself and
Oh
hand this
my
baby
God.
off and then turn around and drive home. I stayed in touch with that family, and there was a couple different times where uh, mom got custody back,
Yeah.
even though there were some very big red flags going on.
Yeah.
And that was one of my earlier big spells that I started being like I cast what I call I did a justice spell. It was a spell to make sure that she was safe and she was in the home that was going to give her the most love and safety. And more so based off of what I believed at that time, because what I knew about the mom, um, it was going to be in the home that I had driven her to that had her siblings. And within a month, CPS had to take that baby back out of the mom's house because of circumstances that
Circumstance.
happened
Yeah. Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
And she was back with that family again. And it was one of those like desperate moments of reaching out into the ether for help. I desperately need this for this child that deserves. I'd actually never talked about this before. Um, it was my first actual, I'm not a Hecatean witch, but I did reach out to Hecate. She is a great protector of the crossroads of those who have been cast aside.
Yeah.
And there's no one who feels more cast aside than a foster child. So she may be
You're
an
gonna make me
infant.
cry. Dear
Well,
God.
even though she couldn't be with me, still have so much love for her. I won't say her legal name, but
No.
I called her Nova because she burst into my life like a supernova, and I still think of her to this day.
And she wound up being safe and
Mhm,
sound through your will, like your will, your desire, your love reached through the ether and helped to guide her to where she was meant to be. Yes, I'm sure Hecate helped and I'm sure that she lit the path, but
mhm.
that's really fucking powerful. And can I also just say how beautiful it is that your path back to to witchcraft and that your path back to finding your own power was about helping a helpless child. It wasn't about I'm desperate to find a job or
Yeah.
I'm desperate to find a partner. Your generous soul emerged at that moment and said, I need to do everything I can do to protect, to love, to make sure this being has everything that they need to thrive and survive. That in and of itself speaks to exactly who you are as a person and as a witch. So, oh my God, you're amazing. I'm so fucking touched by that. We definitely need to take a break. Whew. We need to take a break. We need to hear from our sponsors. And then when we come back, let's get into the work you're doing now. Um, because your journey has just been amazing and everyone needs to know what you're doing now. So we'll be right back after we hear from our sponsors. We're back with Marshall, Witch of Southern Light. I need to know before we get into your work and everything, but I guess this dovetails into that. Tell us about Witch of Southern Light. Like, why is that your moniker?
It's so interesting. I love that you mentioned that. When I first started, like everyone else in the 2020 quarantine TikTok boom, I was exposed to witch talk, and I was like, oh my
Yeah.
goodness. Mind you, what it was then and what it is now, I think like there are two different things, but
Yeah.
it was my first exposure. I had just downloaded TikTok probably like 2 months before. um you have to understand, I had never seen witchcraft on social media because I went for a long period of time separated from witchcraft and social media from what it was when I was in my teenage years.
Yeah.
So I went from books that talked about secrecy. No one saw your book of shadows. No, it should be burned upon your death. You had
Yep.
threefold law rules. You had lots of very big
Yep.
specificities.
Yep.
And I just started flipping through and I was like, people are showing their books of shadows. Look at this candle spell. Oh, this is beautiful. And I was
Yeah.
very inspired. And I just started like making little TikToks and videos of concoctions that I was making. And I started realizing like, I probably should have a screen name that isn't my literal legal name. And I started thinking about like I've always been a huge fan of like the witch of idea, especially from storybooks. I like
Yeah.
the idea of especially as now an animist, having a local spot. So like I initially actually wanted to be just like the Witch of the South, kind of like a
Yeah.
play off of, Wizard of Oz or whatnot.
Yeah.
But it was taken by someone who isn't even a practitioner.
What the hell?
And I know, right? And something popped up to me, and I've always been like, it's a bucket list of mine to go see the Northern Lights. I've always wanted to see them. They have this magic all on their own, and I know it's
Yeah.
like some sort of particles that are would
Doesn't
kill us if
matter.
it weren't for the atmosphere. But I always had this idea of, well, if I can't see the Northern Lights, I'll be the Southern Light. And so I ended up creating this like Witch of Southern Light, as in like kind of like a play off of the Northern Lights, but I live in the South. And to be perfectly honest, anyone from I'd say Texas to Florida, anyone in this, or probably North Carolina, actually, if you want to go to like living in this area carries a very specific type of Southern culture. Um, that's a wide spectrum of things that carries its ups and downs.
Yes.
Um, but I grew up here and I very much identify with understanding the culture of the South,
Yeah.
navigating through it. Um, I know that that's something that, like I said, does not always carry the best connotations whatsoever, especially in American history. But it's where I was born, and it's the family that I was raised in, and it's the experience that I had. And it's also the place that I first started fighting injustices, that I first
Mm.
started speaking out against anti-gay laws, racist laws, laws that infringe upon people's, and especially vulnerable people's rights. We mentioned before the break about that spell kind of being all about helping someone who was in their most vulnerable state. Witchcraft historically has always been
Mm.
about people who are othered, who are desperate, who are needing to find that thing because there's nothing. Every other avenue has been tried, and that's very experiential for me coming from the South.
Mhm. Absolutely, and I think that it's you hit the nail on the head in saying that, witchcraft has always been about this reaching out for
Mhm.
something.
Marginalized people not having the avenues that people with the
Yes.
most privilege would have.
Yes. And
Yeah.
and and desperate to take matters into your own hands,
Yes.
right? Like, no one else can help me at this point. I've gone down every other avenue. This is in my hands, and do I have the power? Yes, I do, to
Yes.
change,
Yes.
right? My circumstances and the circumstances of other people, whether they are close to me or removed from me,
Mhm.
if I care enough, yes, I do have the power inside of me to change that. And let's just be honest, you definitely are a light. Like, you are 100% a light. You're just delightful.
Thank you.
You're incredible. Um, so you've recently come out with this really great book. Can you
Oh,
talk to
thank
us a
you.
little bit about this work and what
Yeah.
drove you? I know that I have the full name of the book written down here, and I don't see it.
That's okay.
It's a
I can say that.
grimoire. I know it's a
Yeah,
grimoire. I just don't want to get it wrong. So tell us
sure.
about the book and what drove you to write this.
Yeah. Well, the book is called Cunning Words, A
Cunning
Grimoire of Tales
Words.
and Magic. I am obsessed with the word cunning. I feel like it actually deeply describes my experience, my path. Originally, uh, cunning goes back to the root of to know.
Mm,
That's literally what it means. It means to know, and it was originally described of a lot of the cunning folk, cunning men and women of mostly Britain,
Mhm.
which is where a big portion of my ancestry does come from. And they were people who kind of walked a crooked path. They may use a psalm from the Bible to heal you of your warts, but they also and they may do an anti-witching charm, like a witch bottle to protect you, or pins in an actual heart to get a curse that's been put on your land. So a lot of these original cunning people, cunning folk, were anti-witching people, and at the same time, we have documentation where they might have also been the one that put it on you, so you would go to them to take it off. So
Right.
there was a very like kind of a crooked path going on there. And that's one of the things that I identify with, not so much like the trickster aspect, but more so the being clever, the being smart, the being witty, the willingness to be brave enough to kind of reach out into the spirit realm and be in desire to know. I am willing to know. I'm willing to make the pacts, make the deals, make the commitments, absorb the knowledge, and then build a practice and see what I can do with it. The book Cunning Words specifically, it's a collection of tales. It's in three parts. Uh, I call it story tales because folk tales carries this very specific connotation that's an oral tradition, an oral
Mhm.
history of people who pass down folk tales.
Mhm.
These are written, these are new. These have never been written down before and they've never been told by anyone else before. But they're stories that I came up with that I think teach a lot of old ideas, old
Mm.
concepts within witchcraft, within magic in a new way. Um, and I wanted, because for me, folklore and stories are a major motivator for magic. I extremely find magic in the power of storytelling. There's this thing called historiola, where a lot of old cunning charms, especially when they made their way over to United States from Britain to America, more actually mostly North England and into Appalachia, a lot of these little charms were tiny stories. They were little sympathetic stories. So there's the most famous one, like if you have a burn on your arm or your finger or something, the cunning person would put their hands over it and they would say something like, "Three angels came from the east. One brought fire, two brought frost, out fire, in frost, and the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost." And they would say that over and over and over again over this burn. And the concept was you were invoking the power of these angels. And while one of them brought fire, two brought frost. So the two outweigh the one. And then the story kind of uses sympathetic magic from this tale of the
Yeah.
power of these angels who put out the fire and then healed the burn in you. So for me, I find the magic in story to be so powerful, and I wanted to write stories that people could channel and see acts of magic being done, and it would inspire them to either build parts of their own craft or literally do the spellcraft they see in the story. We have a lot of history of folk tales and fairy tales and mythology carrying plants that might have certain virtues,
Yep.
especially in like Greek mythology, Celtic mythology. That's why we know that yew has this connection to necromancy. That's why we know that picking a maiden picking yarrow at dawn with the dew is for love. We know a lot of these things come from the story, from the
Mhm.
mythology, and I wanted to build my own set of stories and mythos that taught other people who wanted to read it how they could do the same thing. It could inspire them, or they could just dive right in and do this magic.
I think the fact that you've written original stories is something no one has done recently. Um, and I agree with you that stories are how everything is passed down,
That's
right?
right.
It's and they're how we learn. So going back to this idea of knowing and that word cunning, and for me that word cunning is to know, like the knowing of,
Hmm.
I can understand this, or I see things other people don't see, and I can figure things out that other people can't figure out.
Hmm.
Um, but having a story to teach lessons, morality, religion, spiritual work, that's how human beings learn, right? We
Exactly.
learn about each other. I just spent the last 45 minutes learning about you through the stories of your life. right? It's
Mhm.
how we connect. So doesn't it make sense, and isn't it absolutely fucking amazing to learn about witchcraft and practice through storytelling, through allegory, through example, through um uh what's the word I'm looking for? Um Mimic, like
Yeah.
symbolism, right?
It's a
That
it's a sympathy. It's a type of
Yes.
storytelling sympathy.
Yes. I think it's fucking brilliant, Marshall.
Oh,
Like,
thank you.
I think it's brilliant. And again, to be able to dissect it a little bit and go, here are really great stories we can learn from. But then also there's spellcraft in this story, and this story could be
Hmm.
used as a charm. Um, is also amazing. Like, wow, how cool is that? Was there anything? Was one of the questions I wanted to ask you was, you know, uh, how are storytelling and witchcraft intertwined? But you've already just discussed that. But when did you realize how storytelling and witchcraft were so um that they dovetail together in the ways that they do? How did you discover that in your
You know,
own practice?
uh, Aaron Oberon, who wrote Southern Cunning, actually lives in Florida. I had heard them on several podcasts, and now we're friends online now, so I've gotten to know them. And I remember a few years ago having a conversation with them, and also New World Witchery, Corey Thomas Hutchinson, who wrote
Mhm.
the book New World Witchery, and there I had some wonderful conversations with them that was all about it was specifically all about folkloric witchcraft, the
Mhm.
idea of folklore inspiring the magic of the witch.
Mhm.
And I remember reaching out to Aaron, I want to say it was like the fall of 2021. Yeah. I remember reaching out and asking, like, do you think I could use magic from my own folklore? Like I could write my own? And he was just like, of course, every story starts somewhere. Everyone has everything that exists today was at some point someone's unverified personal gnosis, right? Their UPG.
Yes.
And I started to realize, well, I want to start with something simple. And I remember because I have a couple of these old charms that I started with, and the first one ever was the Three Wise Healers. And there's a story in my book called the Three Wise Healers, but the
Yeah.
charm came first. And the charm was really interesting. It was very much like the angels. It was a story, and it went. There once were three wise healers, one with hair as red as blood, one as black as a raven, one as fair as flax. The first one healed your wounds. The second took your pain, and the third made you whole again. And it was so simple. It was just if you have a wound, if you have a pain, if you have a headache, if you're needing of healing, the practitioner would put their hands upon that area or the heart center or whatever was going on. And under your breath, you would envision these three healers coming to you. And the first one would heal your wounds. And I don't actually expect like the cut to just magically heal up underneath me. But
Right.
if you have like a poultice or like a bandage or
Yep.
maybe some gauze and you're pressing down on a wound,
Yeah.
that's helping to stop the blood just medically. That's not even magic.
Right.
But you're invoking the power of the red
Yeah.
of the three wise healers. The first one with hairs red as blood. And the second one, hair is black as a raven. And black actually represents the absence. So that's where it took your pain away. And the white was the kind of finishing, the made you whole again.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of times, especially when you're kind of sick, like, yeah, okay, the symptoms are gone, but I don't feel quite right again. So being whole was really important to me. And funny enough, the initial inspiration for that was this beautiful collection of photographs from this, I want to say either Russian or Eastern European photographer. I wrote it down in my book, but it was this book of these three women holding three foxes. One was red, one was white, one is
I've
black.
seen this photograph.
You know what I'm talking.
I
I
know
feel like
exactly.
everyone's seen it.
And it is
Yes,
so
it's
beautiful and
stunning.
so powerful.
It stuck with me for
Yes.
so long, and that's what inspired this original charm. And I started using it, and it worked. It helped. And I remember back in not last year, but the year before, so 2022, I live in Texas, like I said, and there was a big monkeypox outbreak.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you remember that. And it
Yeah.
was really hitting the gay community hard. I had four different friends who were all in isolation, covered in monkeypox. It is painful. it leaves scars. It gives you the worst body aches ever. You will survive it. No one dies from that version of monkeypox. It's a derivative of smallpox.
Yeah.
And most people who were born after, I think 73 is when they stopped giving the smallpox
Yeah.
vaccine, um, were susceptible. And I had a friend who reached out to me and said, I've been locked in my house for 10 days. I don't know what to do. There's nothing that anyone can give you for this. Is there anything you can do? He texted me that. And so I made a charm bag and I put a few things in there and I braided a like a necklace to wear the charm around his neck. And
Mm.
as I was braiding it, I said the three wise healers charm over and over and over and over again the whole time. And then I drove to his apartment, I put it on his doorstep, and I left and I texted him it was outside. Within I want to say it was like 2 days, the pox started to dry up into scabs and fall off. Within 3 to 4 days, like the fever broke, the pain was gone. And it was one of those moments where he was just so grateful. And then I had two other friends who he had told, hey, you should reach out to Marshall. He made me this. And it was one of those things like I was like, oh my God, I'm literally my local cunning man.
You
It was
totally
it,
are.
it was amazing. And it actually ended up inspiring the story because in the book, there's a story about three foxes of different colors who help heal a queen who's ailing of a ghastly pox. And when you read it, I do say in the author's notes in the back where the inspiration came from, but the story is inspired by a real life experience. And whoever thought that in 2020s we'd be experiencing a smallpox outbreak? Like that's
Right.
crazy. But
Right.
I lived it. And now there are literally no
Wow.
because we all got many of us got vaccinated if you were of the population where it might hit. By the end of the year, there were literally like almost no cases left of monkeypox. So it was a very, very moving experience and it inspired the story.
Again, I just think that's brilliant. And the fact that you're living and breathing this type of work in a real life way every day and helping other people. It's not esoteric in the ether kind of work. It's
Hmm.
real healing work. And you're doing it through the medium of storytelling, which everyone understands. We live our lives being told stories. I mean, I'm a movie and a television watcher. That's
Yeah,
like
me
what we do
too.
for fun. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like that's
everyone has a story to tell.
right. And to make the story intentional,
Hmm.
to use your words and use the story to imbue energies. Again, we've all been doing it, right? When my little old Italian grandma would sit and do a rosary and do her little prayers,
Hmm.
these little stories that you're telling yourself about the Blessed Mother, will look out for you and all of these things, or the story of this saint or whatever. You're telling these stories to call these energies forward in the
Hmm.
form that makes sense for you.
Exactly.
I mean, it's just fantastic, Marshall. You're amazing. And I'm
Thank you.
so grateful you shared so much with us today. I mean, wow. And so tell us,
Hmm.
where can we follow you online? How do we buy your book? Tell us all of your juicy bits so we can stalk you.
Absolutely. You can find me on I don't make as much TikToks anymore, but I have a lot on there. So if you're interested, you can go check them out on TikTok, Threads. I love Threads. I'll shoot my mouth off on Threads all day long, right? And Instagram at Witch of Southern Light, all one word, very simple. Um, I do have a blog, Diary of Southern Light, or Southern Light Diaries on Pathos. On any of my platforms, check out the link trees on there. I have lots and lots of free resources. Literally, if you ever like, I need a collection of magical herb correspondences. There's a free one in there. You can just literally just go check out anytime. All my platforms are on there as well. If you want to buy my book, you can check it out on Amazon. I did self-publish. I am an independent publisher. The art in the book is mine, the writing is mine, the cover is mine. Everything was created by me. Um,
Excellent. And congratulations. That's a big
Thank
job.
you. It's self-published, like I said, on Amazon. There is a color version There's a black and white version, an ebook version, and then there's the hard copy version. So you can order any
Amazing.
of those. If you are anti-Amazon, that's totally okay. You can get the black and white version at barnesandnoble.com for Cunning. Just look up Cunning Words. If you're listening and you are a metaphysical shop owner, it's also available on the Ingram Spark catalog. So any
Oh.
shop, whether you want to carry it online or in your physical store, I believe it retails for like $16. So it's very cheap to buy wholesale if you want to carry it in your store. And I'd love to see hard copies.
And if it is on the Ingram Spark inventory,
Hmm.
you could go directly to your local metaphysical shop and say, hey, can you order this through Ingram Spark for
Yes,
me?
you
So you
absolutely
could
can.
support your local stores and you could support Marshall, which you should do because obviously he's out in the world doing so much for other people. You are just miraculous. And I'm so, so grateful to have met you. Okay,
Thank
last
you.
question, last question.
Yes,
Also, we're going to put all of your links on our show notes so
great.
people can find you. Okay, last question. And I ask this to everybody, so get ready. If you could have me as a
Hmm.
kitchen witch cook you one magical meal, what would it be and why?
So I actually have been thinking about this already because I know you always ask this question.
I love it
So
so much.
I'm going to be perfectly honest. While I am a foodie, I'm actually really simple to please when it comes to food. I think
Mhm.
if you made me like a homemade pizza, like a spicy salami or like a margarita, something with just like really rustic ingredients, throw on some whole basil, throw on some slices of mozzarella, and like I obviously don't expect you to have a brick oven, but if you did,
I don't.
like
But
it
but
would
I feel like I want to make a dirty joke about a salami, but I'm not
do
going
it.
to. I'm
Do
gonna
it. I don't
I'm gonna
care.
I'm gonna stay classic. I mean, who doesn't like a spicy salami? Um,
That's me for
thank
sure.
you.
Oh, and Kiston,
He's genuine. So he's looking at you like, "Are you done? Are you
are you
finished?
done?
Are you finished?" Okay. I feel like that would be really, really cool, and I almost feel like I would grill that for you. Like I would put
Yes.
it out on the grill because I don't have a
Mhm.
brick oven, but I would grill it for you. And because you're so wonderful, I would make you my grandmother's, my nonna's uh pizza dough recipe, which I don't make because I am celiac. So I don't make it. I don't even make it for my husband, but I would make it for you.
I would
And
eat
it,
it
it
all.
gets those beautiful like bubbles on the inside. And you put a little sea salt on the crust. And then I would
Mhm.
do like just some crushed tomatoes, fresh oregano, fresh basil, and fresh mutts. And you would just be in fucking heaven. That's what I
I
would
would
make for
be. I
you.
would be. And you know,
And a
basil's
glass
really,
of
really what
very wet red wine.
has to be super red, like a Cab or
Super red.
Chianti.
Yes, yes,
Absolutely. And you know,
yes,
basil's really wonderful for blessings because holy basil carries like that
yes,
that history, that
yes.
connotation of blessings. It's wonderful prosperity. You can
Hmm.
sprinkle. I used to do this thing where I would make just frozen French bread pizzas in the toaster oven, and I
Yes.
would sprinkle basil on it. And as I would do, I would just say, "Easy money, easy money, easy money,"
Yeah, it's
just to
really
increase my
associated with
tips.
but money and
Mhm.
love and tomatoes are a love food. They're my favorite love food
Oh
actually.
yeah.
So they help us to give and receive love. So I always feel I actually right now I have a giant pot of beef ragu on my stove for dinner tonight.
Ooh,
And it's
yum.
literally just crushed tomatoes, beef tips boiling way down and
My mouth is watering.
fresh basil that is not in season, but I freeze it when it's in season. And then I put it in my sauces throughout the year. So, and now I'm starving. Marshall, Witch of Southern Light, you are a light. Thank you for bringing your light into our world. Thank you for sharing your light with us. And everyone, please go check him out online, Witch of Southern Light. Just Google Witch of Southern Light, and you're going to get everything about him. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this podcast. Remember, you can support us by clicking the support link so we get more awesome episodes like this. Check me out at cucinaurora.com because we have all these links there everybody can share. And until next time, everyone, I wish you so many blessings and so much gratitude.